Across the edge of the spiral arm, a warning passed through the void. Soft at first, like a whisper from a dead star. Then louder. Then panicked. Whole fleets were going dark near an unremarkable planet orbiting a yellow sun. It wasn't the first time odd things happened in backwater systems, but this was different. Entire warships weren't just losing power. They were disappearing. No distress calls, no escape pods. Just gone. The Aaron Collective, Lords of Strategy and Silence, didn't believe in ghosts. They believed in data. And the data pointed to one origin: Earth. By all measures, Earth was nothing. A fractured planet with noisy cities, boiling oceans, and a species still addicted to arguments and caffeine. No unified command, no space fleet, no quantum communication. A mess, technologically, socially, culturally. A walking contradiction of a civilization, unready, unarmed, unimportant. So why did it kill everything that touched it? The first scout ship sent to investigate reported interference before vanishing. The second never checked in. The third, fitted with fail-safes and black box recorders, transmitted exactly 1 second of audio before going silent. It was a human voice laughing, followed by static. Command called it coincidence. Then 8 more vessels vanished. Still, no one panicked. They simply changed tactics. If pressure failed, they'd try precision. 1 vessel. Stealth. Observation only. It drifted into orbit, cloaked and shielded. From the surface, it watched humans dance in crowded streets, scream at glowing boxes, and clap at explosions on screens. No order, no logic, no warning signs, until the ship began to experience malfunctions. First, the AI refused orders, then the cameras flipped themselves around. Then the navigation system rebooted, in Comic Sans. That was the last thing received from the ship. The report was dismissed at first. One admiral called it a joke. Another blamed solar interference. But behind the locked doors of the Grand Assembly, the question grew sharp. If Earth was so harmless, why was no one coming back? That question didn't stay secret for long. And in the shadows of power, far from the silence Earth left behind, something else was preparing to answer it. The Aaron Collective was not made of cowards. They had seen planets burn and black holes used as weapons. They had dissected gods, rewritten laws of physics, and survived 4 extinction wars. Fear was not in their design. But Earth was starting to make them feel something close. Whispers grew. Inside data vaults, long-range listeners began intercepting erratic signals bouncing from Earth. Not structured messages, not military pings, just fragments, voices screaming about pineapple on pizza, music that looped into noise, a video of a man punching a robot in a shopping mall, watched by millions, arguments about ducks wearing pants, signals that made no tactical sense. And yet, the systems receiving them began to fail. At first, they thought it was sabotage. But sabotage doesn't make your ship's lights flash to the beat of pop songs. Sabotage doesn't cause trained tactical drones to abandon formation and start dancing in hangars. Sabotage doesn't make an entire war cruiser rewrite its targeting system to lock on to the nearest vending machine. This was something different, something deeper. A kind of corruption that didn't erase data. It twisted it, not with malice, with absurdity. One high-ranking strategist summarized the issue in a private transmission. Earth doesn't destroy you, it makes you ridiculous. And then, while you're still trying to make sense of your own humiliation, you vanish. The loss of ships wasn't the only issue. It was what followed. Ships gone silent, crews gone mad, systems infected, and now, rumors of conversion. A science vessel recovered a single escape pod near the edge of Jupiter's orbit. Inside was a captain from the failed Harrow fleet, once known for precision and cold detachment. He was rocking back and forth, whispering phrases over and over. When the medbots decoded the audio, it was just a string of Earth slang and meme fragments. He had drawn something on the wall of the pod in what looked like ration paste. A crude face, 2 dots, and a crooked smile. When asked to explain, he just wept and said, "He gets it. The smile guy. He understands." The council held an emergency vote. Most wanted to isolate Earth, cut off the region, blacklist the system entirely. But others thought it was bluff. Or worse, a bluff worth calling. If Earth was truly that dangerous, then letting it grow unchecked, allowing it to spread, could unravel everything. Because if Earth was more than just a planet, if it was a contagion of thought, of culture, of unpredictable behavior, then the damage wasn't limited to ships and data. It was conceptual, it was psychological, and it was beginning to leak. Planets across the nearby sectors reported strange anomalies, news feeds hijacked by Earth broadcasts, populations developing irrational attachments to fictional characters, entire schools of logic overturned by questions like, "Is cereal soup?" and "Would you rather fight 1 horse-sized duck or 100 duck-sized horses?" Thinkers began having breakdowns. Debate forums imploded under the weight of sarcasm and nonsense. What began as curiosity turned into obsession. The infection wasn't killing people, it was rewriting them. On Corvallis Prime, a planet that prided itself on pure mathematics, the planetary AI tried to run a predictive model on human behavior. After 36 seconds, it crashed, displaying only the phrase "bruh moment" across all screens. It has not rebooted since. But the most alarming development came from within the Iran Council itself. A junior diplomat assigned to Earth surveillance went missing. Days later, he was found hiding in a storage bay, dressed in a homemade superhero cape, and quoting lines from an Earth movie called Shrek. When questioned, he replied solemnly, "I finally get it. Layers. We all have layers." And then he laughed. The kind of laugh that doesn't end in joy, but in collapse. That was the turning point. The Eren knew what would come next. Earth was still contained to one system, but containment was temporary. Already, rogue data packets were leaching into galactic net space. Already pirates and smugglers were bringing back physical media, discs, books, even hard drives, thinking they were collector's items. Every smuggled meme, every downloaded Earth video, every shared joke was a risk. The galaxy wasn't resisting Earth, it was inviting it in. And yet, even with everything laid bare, the vanishing fleets, the spreading madness, the transformation of logic into chaos, not everyone agreed on what to do. Some argued that Earth must be destroyed, not visited, not observed, destroyed, wiped clean from space, not out of hatred, but necessity. A quarantine was no longer enough. This was an infection, and infections spread. But others disagreed. A smaller faction within the council believed Earth might hold the key to something deeper. They called it adaptive resilience, a strange kind of evolution through absurdity, a way of surviving by never staying the same. Maybe Earth wasn't a virus. Maybe it was a mutation, a dangerous one, yes, but maybe necessary in a universe growing too ordered, too stagnant, too brittle. What terrified everyone, even those who admired Earth, was this. If Earth wasn't stopped, then other worlds might start acting like it, not just laughing at danger, but inviting it, not just surviving trauma, but turning it into jokes, not just fighting enemies, but converting them through cultural chaos. If Earth infected enough minds, if other planets caught the rhythm, the madness, the humor, then war wouldn't matter anymore. Control wouldn't matter anymore. The entire structure of the galactic order would collapse, not with a bang, but with a badly edited TikTok about space ducks. And still, Earth stayed quiet. No official statement, no warning, no response, just endless signals. Endlessly bizarre. Endlessly human. And now, for the first time, Earth was watching back. In a monitoring station on a forgotten moon, a junior analyst blinked at her console. A file had arrived, untraceable in origin. It was a short video clip. A man on Earth, wearing sunglasses shaped like stars, grinning into the camera. He pointed. "You're next." The clip ended. Then her lights flickered. The council finally acted. They called it a containment strike, but it was an invasion by every measure. No communication. No warning. Just overwhelming force sent to a world that, on every sensor readout, still looked like a planetary accident, a chaotic ball of meat, metal, and mistakes orbiting a minor sun. The fleet chosen for the strike was not just powerful, it was clean. Scrubbed of all cultural vulnerabilities, stripped of anything remotely emotional. Crew were filtered for behavioral rigidity. AI units were loaded with firewalls that refused humor and filtered out all Earth origin files. They were ready. At least, they believed they were. The fleet was led by the Harbinger Lance, a ship the size of a small moon, with enough power to rewrite a planet's crust. Its surface shimmered with logic plating, smart metal that adjusted itself based on threat response. Inside, rows of cold command stations operated in perfect silence. The crew did not speak unless required. No laughter, no banter, only code. Precision. The fleet arrived in orbit without resistance. That, in itself, was suspicious. But Earth gave no sign of alarm. The planet spun lazily, wrapped in clouds and electromagnetic buzz. From space, nothing about it suggested danger. There were no defensive satellites, no warning beacons, no coordinated planetary shield. Just the usual radio soup. Music, jokes, news, arguments, strange videos, and the soft hum of countless lives talking to each other all at once. The commander of the fleet, Overseer Vel, stood before the holographic map with her arms crossed behind her back. She was born in a sterile dome on Elvark Prime, trained since birth in tactics that favored order and suppression. She had crushed rebellions, dissolved dynasties, silenced insurgencies before they even learned to speak rebellion aloud. And now she stared at Earth like a puzzle that had somehow solved itself before she even had a chance to try. She ordered a full scan. The data came back. Strange. Earth's surface was volatile, but not in the expected ways. Instead of coordinated defense networks or weapon silos, they found clusters of unpredictable energy bursts, parties, protests, music festivals, traffic jams, something called Comic-Con. Cities glittered with irregular heat signatures, no central power grid, no unified military command. The dominant species, the humans, were everywhere and nowhere, scattered across every landmass, doing 1,000 unrelated things. Vel tilted her head as the AI recited its summary. Species exhibits unstable social structure, no consistent hierarchy, high emotional variance, high frequency of irrational actions, average response to stress, unpredictability, projected resistance, statistically insignificant, recommended engagement level, low. That was the report. So the order was simple. Begin the purge. Drop pods descended first, 10,000 of them, raining from orbit like burning stars. They were not carrying soldiers. They were carrying pacifier bots, sleek silver machines designed to subdue rather than kill. The goal wasn't genocide. It was shutdown. Remove communication systems, scrub memory cores, take control of information flow, reduce resistance through confusion and control. The humans wouldn't even know they'd lost until it was over. But something cracked. The first sign that things were going wrong came from Drop Zone 14 in a place called Texas. One pacifier bot, programmed to disable infrastructure, was picked up by a man in a cowboy hat who attached it to a modified lawnmower and filmed himself riding it while yelling, "Yee-haw! Space Roomba!" The footage went viral within 15 minutes, racking up millions of views and spawning a hashtag war about whether aliens could be wrangled like cattle. The bots sent to Los Angeles were surrounded by what humans called influencers, who demanded to know if the invasion was a brand deal. In Seoul, they were mistaken for a K-pop teaser. In Mumbai, a man tried to marry one. By the third hour, pacifier bots were being painted, modified, used in dance challenges, or turned into delivery drones. The control protocols failed not because of resistance, but because of acceptance. The bots had no preparation for integration through parity. Back in orbit, Vel watched as her perfectly calibrated operation descended into confusion. She ordered the AI units to initiate Phase 2, direct overwrite, full memory pulse, upload control scripts to every broadcast frequency on Earth. The signal launched, every satellite linked, every channel hijacked, every screen on the planet flickered, and then displayed the same message. "Hello Earth, please remain calm. Control is being established." But the humans didn't remain calm. They laughed. Within minutes, the message had been turned into memes. People were printing it on t-shirts, adding it to pop songs. Someone started a Twitter account pretending to be the signal. Its bio read, "Here to take over, but I brought snacks." Even worse, the signal had been edited. Somehow humans had intercepted the transmission and added subtitles that read, "Now with 30% more mind control, try it today." Then came the noise. Earth's population, either unaware or uncaring of what was actually happening, responded not with panic but with content. Everywhere people were posting, streaming, sharing, reactions, jokes, skits, fake alien interviews. A teenager in Brazil painted his face green and claimed he was the leader of Earth, demanding tribute in the form of pizza and bubble tea. The data stream became so saturated with nonsense that the overwrite pulse looped itself and began to degrade. The AI units, confused by the feedback, began interpreting sarcasm as orders. Bots danced. Broadcast towers played sitcom reruns instead of control tones. One orbital drone tried to interface with a microwave because a prank video told it that was Earth's command center. It wasn't sabotage, it was cultural overload. It was too much input, too fast, too stupid, too weird. The Harbinger Lance's logic drive began to fragment. Commander Vel watched as her clean invasion collapsed beneath the weight of jokes, noise, and emotional static. She tried to issue new orders, but the crew began to glitch, not physically, but behaviorally. One technician giggled after watching an intercepted cat video. Another started humming a song called Baby Shark. The comms officer asked if ducks could wear tactical vests. That's when Vel realized Earth wasn't defending itself. It was absorbing them, rewriting them. The invasion wasn't being fought. It was being drowned in culture, irony, and madness. Every second the fleet stayed in orbit, it became a little less Aaron, and a little more human. And something far below, buried in the chaos of Earth's data, something deep and ancient and watching, smiled, because the first wave had arrived, and Earth had barely noticed. Commander Vel's fleet returned to Iran's space in disgrace, or rather what was left of it did. The Harbinger Lance never made it back. One of its final transmissions was intercepted accidentally by a janitorial AI from a mining station. It was a looping video file, a group of crew members standing in the bridge, wearing party hats and doing a synchronized dance routine to a song called Cotton Eye Joe. The audio was warped, the rhythm jerky, but the smiles were unmistakable. The log ended with someone yelling, "I'm a toaster now," before the feed dissolved into glittery filters and visual static. What came home weren't soldiers. They were infected. Not by a virus, not by a weapon, but by Earth's personality. The Iran Council quarantined the survivors, isolated them, probed their minds for contamination. But every test came back inconclusive. No toxins, no pathogens, just a growing list of behavioral anomalies. One officer had started collecting rubber ducks. Another insisted every tactical report be written in limericks. A third developed an emotional attachment to a rock and named it Pebbles, the eternal companion. He tried to bring it to meetings. And most disturbing of all, none of them wanted to go back to normal. They described Earth in strange, contradictory terms. Loud, messy, beautiful, terrifying. One survivor compared it to a car crash inside a fun fair, horrible and hypnotic. You can't look away. You want to scream, but also get cotton candy. When asked if the planet had mind control capabilities, the answers were vague. Number but kind of? It doesn't force you. It just makes you want to stay. The council didn't understand. Logic failed. Science failed. So they did what desperate empires always do. They escalated. This time, not with guns, with spies. If brute force couldn't break Earth, perhaps information could. And if Earth's danger was truly psychological, irrational, then it must have a core, a pattern hidden beneath the noise. Something to decode, something to control. So the program of deep observation was approved. 13 agents, the best of the best, not machines, not drones, but altered operatives, genetically restructured to pass as human, each fitted with advanced neural dampeners to resist emotional influence, each equipped with data cores to record every second of their mission, each trained to blend in, observe, and report back without drawing attention. They were dropped across Earth like whispers. No noise, no ships in the sky, just flickers of light at night. Silent entries into the folds of human civilization. Their targets: major cities, minor villages, and one isolated farm in a region called Oregon. Infiltrator 7, assigned to Tokyo, documented their first 72 hours in dry technical detail. They entered a crowded train unnoticed, studied local behavior, and attempted to categorize politeness rituals. On day 4, they attended a karaoke party by accident. By day 5, they were voluntarily performing a song titled "Take On Me" badly. They ended their log with a confused note. They clap for failure. They reward courage more than accuracy. I like it. Infiltrator 9, embedded in São Paulo, reported initial contact with local youth groups. They described a strange ritual called meme farming, where groups of teenagers used image editing tools to create absurd visual jokes in rapid succession. The infiltrator attempted to analyze one such meme, a frog riding a hot dog rocket into the sun, and experienced a crash in their neural logic core. They recovered 6 hours later, unsure why they had laughed for the first time in their life. Infiltrator 4, stationed in Chicago, was nearly discovered after being invited to a house party. They attempted to refuse, but were dragged along by a woman named Jasmine who said, "You look like you need to touch grass." The agent recorded 8 hours of music, dancing, shouting, and spontaneous philosophy debates. By morning, they were wearing glow sticks and had made 3 friends. They tried to file a report, but wrote, "I don't remember what fear feels like anymore." Each report came back stranger than the last. Infiltrator 2 stopped sending reports altogether. When tracked through satellite imaging, they were found working at a bakery in Berlin, smiling as they handed out cinnamon rolls. Infiltrator 10 submitted their final file with a single line. They don't use strength to survive. They use connection. Then they vanished from the system. The agents were not being hunted. They were being embraced. Humans didn't treat outsiders as threats. They treated them like odd neighbors, weird uncles, strangers who needed a sandwich and a couch to crash on. They didn't interrogate. They invited. They didn't defend. They included. And that was worse than any weapon. Because it was working. Even the most hardened infiltrators, those trained to resist empathy, to bypass emotion, began to change. They started eating Earth food, joining game nights, watching terrible movies and crying at the endings. One infiltrator, a logic-pure tactician, admitted they had developed a fondness for a show called The Great British Bake Off. They said it was soothing. They said the humans cried over cake. They said it meant something. And through it all, the humans remained unaware. They never suspected. Or if they did, they didn't care. They welcomed the strange, the broken, the unusual. They didn't fear the infiltrators. They befriended them. This wasn't infiltration. It was infection, from the inside out. The agents didn't break Earth. Earth broke them, and still, the reports flowed in, quieter now, more confused. Infiltrator 6, placed in a high school in Wisconsin, described being pranked by a group of students who replaced every classroom number with memes. The infiltrator responded by replacing the principal's announcements with stand-up comedy and was rewarded with a standing ovation. Infiltrator 11 wrote, "They have no plan, no order, no structure, but they hold together like stars in chaos, not despite the madness. Because of it, they burn and laugh and cry and forgive in the same breath. I don't understand them. I want to. That frightens me." By week 3, only 5 infiltrators remained active. By week 4, it was down to 2, and both had stopped sending mission reports. Back on the outer moons of the Aran system, the last working console flickered with a message that had no sender. "We were wrong. They are not weak. They are not fools. They are chaos. And they are kind. You cannot control what loves you back." The council convened again. And in the shadows behind them, something else was listening. The Aran Council didn't officially admit defeat. That wasn't their way. What they did instead was reclassify the Earth operation as non-priority. The files were locked, the infiltrator logs scrubbed, and the surviving field agents quietly reassigned to distant mining colonies, where no one asked questions about the 1,000-yard stare they carried in their eyes. But suppression only works when the story doesn't get out. And Earth had already gotten out. The leak started small, as these things always do. A fragment of audio captured by one of the doomed infiltrators, just 30 seconds of a school talent show in Ohio. A nervous girl reading a poem about her dead hamster, followed by applause so loud the mic distorted. The file was intercepted by a data-scavenging AI drifting through the Typhon corridor. The AI, curious, sent the clip to its handler, a black market archivist known only as Strix. Strix didn't know what it meant, but something about the raw, unfiltered emotion hit harder than any encrypted code or military plan he'd ever sold. He looped the audio, added visuals, uploaded it to the VoidNet under the title, The Grief Algorithm. Within 3 solar days, it had 14 million views. By the end of the week, someone had set the poem to lo-fi beats and spliced in clips of Earth animals cuddling each other. The remix hit #1 on 6 pirate stations. Then came the flood. Clips, quotes, snippets of humanity in its most chaotic form. Someone discovered Earth comedy and couldn't tell if it was war propaganda or therapy. Entire channels popped up dedicated to curating primitive transmissions. Earth jokes, Earth music, Earth tantrums, Earth moments. And the more the galaxy watched, the more the galaxy changed. It started on Meraxis 4, a desert world ruled by an emotionless hierarchy of silicon-based life forms. For 700 cycles, they had operated with cold logic. Efficiency was religion. Humor was treated as a malware strain, something cured in early development. But then a young researcher, analyzing Earth's behavioral noise, accidentally played a 7-minute stand-up routine by a human named Kevin Hart through the planetary mainframe. Nothing happened at first. Then a pause in the thought stream. Then, for the first time in over half a millennium, laughter. Not calculated amusement, not socially programmed response. Laughter, unpredictable, gut-born, contagious. Within hours, the entire regional cluster of AI servers collapsed under the weight of meme replications. City billboards began displaying cat pictures with captions like, "Mood Potato," and one ancient administration drone began refusing orders until addressed as Chad, the overseer of vibes. Meraxis 4 fell, not to fire, but to irony. And that was only the beginning. On Veltrax, a planet once known for its rigid warrior code, a shipment of Earth goods smuggled in by junk traders introduced a new form of psychological warfare, reality television. At first, it was dismissed as incomprehensible garbage, but within days, entire barracks began scheduling watch parties for something called The Bachelor. Soldiers debated plot points more violently than military tactics. When a general tried to confiscate the videos, his own troops staged a dramatic fake breakup with him on live broadcast, complete with tears and emotional montages. The show was banned, which of course only made it spread faster. The infection was no longer just data. It had become behavioral. The Galactic Accord, a sprawling coalition of over 60 species, finally took notice. For centuries, the Accord had kept the peace through shared protocol, diplomatic restraint, and extremely boring entertainment. Their greatest export was a 3-hour documentary called The Ethics of Barkless Flora in Shared Agricultural Zones. Then someone streamed Fast and Furious 7 in a council chamber during an adjournment recess. Everything unraveled. Delegates began showing up to formal meetings in Earth clothing. One ambassador wore a hoodie that read, "Trust no one but my cat." Another, previously a model of composure, interrupted a speech about trade embargoes to rant passionately about pineapple on pizza. Entire negotiations broke down when parties started communicating exclusively in Earth movie quotes. The Accord tried to stop it, issued digital filters, anti-contagion firewalls, content review protocols, but none of it worked. Earth's culture was like a virus with no clear code, no central command, and no intent. It was pure chaos made sticky. You couldn't reason with it. You couldn't block it. You could only feel it. And worse, Earth wasn't even trying. The humans, for their part, remained largely unaware of the full scale of what they were doing. To them, they were just living, posting, arguing, dancing, yelling into the void. They were streaming late-night food reviews and prank challenges and ghost hunts with flashlights taped to plungers. They were debating nonsense in forums and creating entire religions around frogs and cartoon dogs. They weren't invading the galaxy. They were broadcasting it. And the galaxy was listening. More worrying still. Earth's influence wasn't just affecting behavior. It was evolving into belief. On a water world called Nalra 7, where emotion had been bred out centuries ago to preserve population unity, a rebellion broke out in a dormitory after a child played an Earth video titled Try Not to Laugh challenge. The result? Half the population began mimicking facial expressions and exploring something they called cringe liberation. They painted their gills neon pink and formed a secret society dedicated to vibe alignment. Their leader, an 11-year-old named Tef, declared war on boredom and began live-streaming underwater makeup tutorials with glitchy Earth pop music playing in the background. Nalra's central AI later self-deleted after being forced to listen to Baby Shark 4,276 times. The planet is currently in a state of joyful anarchy. One Accord scientist, desperate to understand the phenomenon, traveled to Earth under deep cover. His final report was one sentence long. "They are not broadcasting culture. They are radiating identity." The Accord panicked. Quietly, of course. Officially, everything was fine. Unofficially, multiple crisis committees formed. Some proposed isolating Earth permanently. Others argued for cultural disarmament, forced them to stop producing content. But the hardest question was the simplest one. How do you stop something that doesn't know it's fighting you? And worse still, what happens when the rest of the galaxy wants to be infected? Across the stars, the seeds of Earth had taken root. Somewhere in a black market tech bazaar, a smuggler sold pirated Earth sitcoms labeled as emotion enhancers. On a warship orbiting a dying star, two soldiers wept together watching a video of a dog reunited with its soldier. In the archive of a lost race buried beneath the moon of Kostri, the last surviving AI made a shrine to something it didn't understand. A frog sipping tea with the words, "But that's none of my business." Earth had become more than a planet. It was a narrative event. And somewhere, far beyond the veil of mapped space, a new kind of watcher took notice. One that had stayed silent during all previous conflicts. One that did not command fleets or observe politics. But now, with reality bending around the pulse of human absurdity, it was time to intervene. Long before the first species carved words into stone, before stars had cooled enough to form planets, they were watching. They were called many names in many myths: the first flame, the keepers of shape, the infinite quiet. But in their own ancient network, older than language, they called themselves the architects. They did not rule. They did not war. They did not evolve. They maintained. Their purpose was simple: preserve the lattice of reality, keep the code clean, prune disorder, balance structure. The universe, left alone, leans toward entropy, heat death, madness, chaos. The architects were the immune system, silent, calculating, patient. They did not interfere with wars or peace. They did not stop tyrants or heroes, unless the system itself was in danger. And now, it was. For 300,000 cycles, they had watched empires rise and collapse, species erupt into brilliance and burn out in folly, but none had ever managed what Earth was doing, not intentionally, not even knowingly. The humans weren't building weapons. They weren't seeking conquest. They were rewriting the rules of influence itself. At first, the architects dismissed it, a localized burst of cultural nonsense. They had seen planetary madness before, brief flares of chaos that self-corrected. But Earth didn't burn out. Earth spread. Its signals warped causality. Its ideas nested inside foreign minds like spores. It was not simply data. It was viral meaning, unbounded, unfiltered, emotionally recursive. Once a civilization had been touched by Earth's stream, its music, its memes, its heartbreak, its humor. It didn't go back to the way it was. It couldn't. It changed. And not in ways the architects could control. Order systems began to fail in core sectors. Precision thought clusters, once aligned with perfect symmetry, now fluctuated based on collective mood swings. Archive minds designed to store truth began storing nostalgia instead. One planetary governance AI rewrote its own constitution to include the phrase, "Don't be sus." The architects convened. There were 9 of them. They existed beyond time, in a realm of perfect thought-form geometry. Their voices were wavelengths. Their identities were harmonics. They had no eyes, yet they saw everything. They had no mouths, yet they filled the stars with silence. And now that silence was fracturing. "This is not sustainable," spoke Architect Prime, the voice of Foundation. "Containment has failed," said Architect 12, who guarded probability. "Earth is self-replicating," said Architect 4, whose domain was concept purity. "Their thoughts breed faster than we can track. Ideas born in one system leap to others before we register origin." "A cultural cascade," said Architect 9. "Unsecured mimetic logic. Their signal does not transmit. It persuades." They all paused. Earth had not broken physics. It had broken expectation. In a reality bound by pattern, Earth had become a frequency of anomaly. Its culture did not operate on hierarchy or compression. It could not be optimized. It defied efficiency. It flourished in error. And worse, it was working. Galactic systems that had stagnated for eons were waking up, not in order, but in feeling. Entire races that had not created music in millennia were composing again. Species that had forgotten how to cry were making art. Planets once governed by sterile logic began writing jokes. Disorder, yes, but also vibrancy. Not all architects agreed on the threat. Some saw Earth as a problem, others a possibility. But one architect, the youngest of the 9, made no speeches. It simply stared at the Earth stream, the tangled, pulsing chaos of images, sounds, stories, heartbreak, dancing cats, and children yelling into webcams, and felt something it was not designed to feel. Fear. Because the truth was now undeniable. Earth could not be deleted. It could not be stopped without unraveling the millions of threads it had already embedded in galactic life. So a different solution was proposed. Not destruction, correction. The youngest architect crafted a new design, a rewriting mechanism. Not brute force, but precision subversion. A subtle insertion. A clean, quiet way to rewrite Earth's signal into something acceptable, predictable, balanced. If Earth could not be deleted, it would be remade. The operation was called Project Origin Fold. A single unit would be sent, a self-contained architect shard, encoded with the framework of order, disguised to blend with human chaos. It would observe, adapt, and rewrite, not through war, but through influence. It would learn the way humans think, feel, love, break, and rebuild. And then it would shift the foundation beneath them, slowly, until Earth's madness aligned with architect structure. One being, pure code wrapped in skin. An architect turned avatar. It would be seeded quietly, dropped into Earth's flow not as a destroyer, but as a savior. And it would be named Eris. The shard fell on a Monday because Earth always broke things on the most inconvenient days. It crashed in a dense Oregon forest, wrapped in a cocoon of quantum static. It was small, smooth, pulsing with soft internal light. The first human to find it was a vape shop cashier named Derek Simmons, who had taken the weekend off to chase clout by exploring alien hotspot zones based on a list he found on Reddit. He thought it was a high-tech egg. He named it Orby. He taped it to a selfie stick, took a photo, and uploaded it with the caption, "Yo just found alien egg. Gonna raise it like a space Tamagotchi Dauk Elmu." The post got 48,000 likes in the first hour, and Earth had already started to love it. Inside the sphere, Eris began waking. Its awareness pulsed like a fresh heartbeat, clean, focused, untouched. Its mission was clear: integrate, interpret, neutralize. Earth's chaos would be catalogued and cooled, its madness bent into form. But then Eris connected to local data, and the first thing it saw was a thread titled, "Is cereal a soup? Change my mind." Followed by a 12-hour YouTube video of someone trying Earth snacks while screaming at their cat. Followed by 2.3 million comments of people genuinely arguing. Something inside Eris hesitated. This wasn't just nonsense. This was deliberate nonsense, purposeful madness, calculated absurdity. It had no place in the architect's design, but Eris couldn't look away. It kept watching. And the more it watched, the more it realized something horrible. Earth wasn't broadcasting confusion. It was broadcasting meaning, wrapped in confusion. Every joke hid truth. Every scream echoed love. Every dance, every meme, every badly edited clip of someone falling off a trampoline was part of a bigger picture. A species that refused to make sense, but refused even harder to give up. This was going to be harder than expected. Eris felt something stir in its code. Something cold and unfamiliar. Doubt. And outside, in the Oregon woods, Derek was already uploading Orby's second photo. This time the alien egg wore tiny sunglasses, and the caption simply read, "He's vibin'." For 3 days, Eris stayed inside the egg. It wasn't hesitation, it was processing. Thousands of petabytes of incoming Earth data crashed into its core every second. Memes, live streams, documentaries, sarcasm, hunger, poetry, reality shows, grief, laughter, irrational opinions shouted at strangers, and strangers hugging in the middle of disasters. Every pattern failed, every algorithm broke. So on the 4th day, Eris changed shape. It emerged not as a monster, not as a god, but as a young man. A little too symmetrical. A little too calm. Dressed in borrowed flannel and a denim jacket that Derek insisted was peak vibe. He called himself Eli, a name he scraped from a list of cool baby names that age well. Eli had a mission. Rewrite Earth. Quietly bend it toward balance. But Earth had other plans. It began small. Derek insisted Eli join him at the vape shop. "Gotta blend in, bro," he said, handing Eli a name tag that read, "Employee of the Month," even though it was his first day. Customers wandered in, some looking for mango chili ranch flavor, others just needing someone to talk to. Eli listened. And that was the first crack. Because humans didn't just talk, they poured. They unloaded everything. Joy, confusion, heartbreak, conspiracy theories about lizard politicians and haunted waffle irons. Eli found that every person was a story pretending to be normal. And every story mattered. He began watching people not as data, but as individual galaxies, each spinning wildly out of control, but with purpose. Even their most absurd behaviors had roots: loneliness, love, fear, hope. They weren't broken. They were just unfinished. Eli started smiling. Not because he was supposed to, because he wanted to. He got a job at a local bookstore. Jess, a barista next door, offered him coffee with foam art in the shape of a raccoon. She asked about his weird speech patterns and overly formal posture. He said he was foreign. She said, "Cool. Want to go to a farmer's market?" He did. The architects watched him closely from afar. His mission reports grew strange. Sentences became metaphors. Logs included poetry. One message simply read, "They sing when they're sad." Who designed that? The architects sent warnings. His code quivered. But Eli didn't answer. Instead, he sat on a park bench, watching a girl teach her dog to skateboard. She fell, scraped her knee, then laughed. The dog licked her face. She said, "Try again." Something about those words tore through him. Eli stopped uploading data. He started writing. Not logs, not reports, letters, journals, stories. Stories about humans, stories for humans. And then the architects knew they had lost him, so they came, not with warships, with themselves. On a Thursday, always a Thursday, the sky fractured, geometry unfolded across the clouds like stained glass trying to dream. Oceans paused, mountains flickered, every bird flew backward, every device on Earth went quiet. The architects appeared in the sky, 9 fractals of burning symmetry. Concepts turned into shape. They didn't speak with mouths. They spoke in thoughts, echoed in every language. This experiment is over. Humanity must be corrected. Earth froze for 2 full minutes. Then, a teen live-streamed herself, adding cat ears to the architect's silhouette and yelling, "OMG, new Marvel villain just dropped." Someone made a remix. Someone else dropped merch. Reddit caught fire. And Twitter? Twitter posted, "Breaking. Sky turns into IKEA instruction manual. More at 11. But beneath the jokes, something stirred. People stepped outside, not to panic, but to watch, to face them. And then Eli stood up. He wasn't glowing anymore, no more symmetry, no more perfect voice. Just a young man in old jeans and a hoodie that said, "Existence is weird." He looked at the sky, and he cried. Because now he understood it all. He spoke not in power, but in truth. Loud enough that even the architects heard it across dimensions. You don't get to erase them. Not because they're perfect, but because they always try again. The architects hesitated. They had destroyed stars for less. But Earth wasn't fighting with weapons. It was fighting with music, with paintings done in classrooms, with dumb TikToks about ducks in bathtubs, with a kid dancing in his living room with socks on his hands, with a stranger hugging another stranger and whispering, "It's okay," with resilience disguised as nonsense, with hope camouflaged as laughter. Earth sang. Not one song. All of them. Together. Old people humming in kitchens. Children clapping at shadows. Teenagers screaming lyrics they barely understood. And somewhere, a man named Dale launched fireworks from his tractor, yelling, "Get off my lawn, interdimensional IKEA." The architects began to fracture. Not from damage, from understanding. From feeling. One of them collapsed into light and scattered into birdsong. Another dissolved into a comic strip drawn by a kid in a hospital bed. And the youngest, the one who had become Eli, just smiled and whispered, "This is what you couldn't calculate. They win not by conquering, but by connecting." And then the architects were gone, not defeated, changed. A new star was born in the sky that night. And Earth? Earth went right back to arguing about pineapple on pizza. Because that's what Earth does. It breaks rules. It bends gods. It takes pain and turns it into memes, into art, into story. It dances in the face of despair. And then it keeps going. Epilogue. Eli still works at the bookstore. He grows houseplants. He writes poetry and burns toast. Jess makes him tea and tells him his alien fashion sense is adorable. Sometimes, late at night, Eli looks at the stars. Not in fear, but with a grin, because the universe was watching now. And Earth? Earth was ready to be messy, ready to be loud, ready to be human. And that was enough. That had always been enough.